So let's try to finish up this chapter, or this section, 1, 2. I think we should be able to finish it today. All right? I'm going to put the name of what we're talking about because you'll see this. In the problems, it'll say evaluate. So that word evaluate is important because you'll see them. Mode is how many times a number, it's the number that appears the most number of times in a group of numbers, okay? So mode is just the number, it's how many times a number, what did I just say? I said it right the first time. How many times?
Value that appears the most. So
Yeah.
like if there's 1, 5, 2.
It's the number that appears the most number of times. Okay, here we go. I should have never asked. All right, here we go. We're going to evaluate these algebraic expressions. So it sounds fancy. We're going to evaluate algebraic expressions. Now, these are not equations. There's a difference between an algebraic expression and an algebraic equation. This would be an algebraic expression, like 3a minus 2b. Right there, that in and of itself is not an equation. Why is this not an equation? Because what do you think the word equation has in it? Equal. Right, it's got equal sign. This doesn't have an equal sign. This is called an expression. Right? If I had something like this, I don't know, something like that. What's that? That's an equation because it's got an equal sign in it. Okay, so these aren't equations. We will eventually, pretty soon, probably start solving equations. But right now, we're just evaluating algebraic expressions. For instance, here's what they're going to do. Here's an example. They're going to say evaluate a plus bc. Now, if that's all they told you, there's nothing you could do with that. There's absolutely nothing you could do. But they're going to tell you what a is equal to, what b is equal to, and what c is equal to. Then you're going to plug it in, and you're just going to figure out what that number is when I do all that stuff to it. All right? So let's see. If a is 2, let's stop the whistling, please. A is 2, b is negative 3, and c is negative 5. Okay? Probably done plenty of this, didn't you, in your algebra classes? Sure. This is all review. Yeah, it was probably on your homework. Remember what I said yesterday on your homework? There was a couple things we didn't get to yet, but this is the stuff we didn't get to yesterday. So it is definitely on the homework. So let's figure out what this is. So I'm just going to plug stuff in. So instead of a, what do I put in for it? Put 2. Then I put a plus. What is the b and the c? What are they doing to each other? They're multiplying. So what I do is I put 2 parentheses. Now, some people put dots, some people put an X, but when you're doing algebra, most of the time you're going to put parentheses. So let's put parentheses, especially when you start getting into upper algebra. You'll never see the X for multiplication. All right? Every once in a while you'll see the dot, but not very often. You'll usually see them just in parentheses next to each other. And so you put the b in the first parentheses and the c in the next one. So the b is negative 3, and then the c is negative 5. Now, the lesson that we did before this stuff, this is kind of what they started with, right? They started with this, and they just said evaluate. Okay, figure out what the answer to this is. But right now, we have to actually plug the numbers into the letters. So that's really the only difference between what we're doing today and what we've done in the past. Alex, question?
So, since yesterday you did so little, that was one that we see. So would this still be one that we see?
Actually, the homework, it was 1, 2B.
Yeah, the homework, but
Was yesterday, did I say C? It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. Did I call it C?
I'm pretty sure it was 1.
I think yesterday was B.
Yesterday was C.
Was it? Okay, today's D. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're wasting time on this, okay? It's insignificant. It does not make any difference whatsoever, all right? So let's keep going. Shh. See what happens? Okay, unless the question is really important, you don't understand something, just wait till later to ask stuff, okay? So here we go. So we got to do order of operations, right? That's what we did, I think, yesterday, day before, whatever it was, pretty recent. Order of operations, what do we do first? We do the multiplication first before we do any addition and subtraction. So you have to do these two things first before you add it to the 2. So put 2 and then plus, and then figure out what this is. So it's negative 3 times negative 5. That is positive 15. So now you do 2 plus 15, and that is 17. You circle it, and then you're finished. Yes. Yeah, well, I don't think there's much I can do about that. I tried to get him to wake up yesterday, and he didn't, so he's just going to have to deal with the consequences of not paying attention. You're big kids now. You should be able to conduct yourselves the right way. Oh, I forgot. Let's keep the A and the B and the C the same. So what did I say? A was 2, B is -3, and C was -5. All right, so there's the A, B, and C. So this says to evaluate. This one's a little bit trickier. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. So AB plus 3C over B times C minus A. I'm going to give you a minute or two to work on this yourself. Okay, you already saw how to do it. I want to see if you can get the answer. So everybody, in your notes, write it down, and let's see what we get.
What are the numbers?
It's AB plus 3C.
No, up.
It's the same as it was before. Did you write down the other example? It's the same numbers. A, B, and C are the same ones because this is part B. It's the same. A is 2, B is -3, C is -5. Give you about a minute. Just work on it. Is Chauncey the only one absent today? Chauncey's there as well. Azira's not here? Okay. Anybody get an answer yet? All right, Megan, what'd you get? 1? Anybody else? You got a -1? Any other possibilities? Mason, what'd you get? -1. So I got a couple -1s. I got one positive one. Anybody else?
I got a
Positive what? 1. Okay, I got 2 positive ones. I got 2 negative ones. So we're at a dead even heat here. Which one wins?
It's -1.
It's -1. You sure? All right. Let's see. We will. We always will. All right. So let's do it. So this A and B, they're being multiplied together. So here's what I do. I put the 2 parentheses. I just leave them blank right now, and I'll stick the A and the B in there. So A is 2, and B is -3. Plus 3 times C. Again, the 3 is being multiplied by the C, so I'm going to put it in parentheses. The C is -5. Over. And then the B is -3. It's outside this parentheses. It's being multiplied. So I don't really need to put the -3 in parentheses. I could if I wanted to, but you don't have to. And then C minus A. So C is -5 minus A, which is just 2. All right? I had a professor in college say this. I've been saying this ever since I've been teaching. But this is kind of when you put numbers in for the variables right there, I call it you plug and chug. Plug it in, and then the chugging is what we're going to do right now. We're going to work it out. Okay, so we plugged everything in, and now we're going to chug. We're going to work it out. All right, plug and chug. And, oh my gosh, I used to remember his name. Forget his name. Wooldridge. Dr. Wooldridge. He's the reason why I remember that. Okay, so here we go. 2 times -3. Let's do this first. Okay, so let's do this thing, and then we'll do this thing right here. We'll put it on top. All right, so 2 times -3, -6. Now plus, what's this going to be? -15. We could put plus -15, or we could just put -15. Doesn't matter. So that's the top. And we'll do that. We'll do that math in the next step, okay? Let's look at the bottom. Again, what's the very first thing on that PEMDAS, that please excuse my Aunt Sally? What's the first thing we do? Parentheses. So let's do the parentheses first. So I'm going to put -3 out front. then I'm going to do what's in the parentheses. Even though it's subtraction, it's in the parentheses. That takes precedent over everything else, the parentheses. So we do that. What's negative 5 minus 2? Negative 7. Add a line, change the sign. Remember that? At some point, you should just be able to look at negative 5 minus 2 and know automatically it's negative 7. But if you still need to do that add a line, change the sign thing, feel free to do that. So that's negative 7. All right, we're getting there. Pretty close. Let's do the top, okay? Let's do the... I like to do all the... Get the answer for the top, get an answer for the bottom, and then if you can divide, then divide, whatever. So what's negative 6 minus 15? Negative 21. And this is over what? Negative 3 times negative 7, which is positive 21. That's where you get your negative from. So you got a negative over a positive, which is always going to be what? Negative. Different signs when you multiply and divide are always negative. Doesn't matter which one's the bigger one and all that kind of stuff. Right? And then 21 over 21 is 1. So that is the answer. It's negative 1. Okay? We go to that? All right, let me go through a couple more things, and then you might have some time to ask me some questions on last night's homework. Finish up last night's homework if you didn't, and then I've got another homework for you. All right. I can't scroll down because I'm limited to this little area. That's what I did. All right, this is called properties of 0 and 1. It's almost a waste of time to do this, but I'm going to do it. It's got it in here. So write it down. So what is the additive property? These are all called properties. This one's not a property. It's the one that's called something different. It's identity. All right, the additive identity. Identity means it stays the same. All right, so like my identity has been the same since I was born till I die. I'm still me, right? I might have changed different things about myself. I might look different. I might act different, all that kind of stuff, but I'm still me. Everybody with me on that? So identity means you don't change it, right? It doesn't change. So you have an additive identity and you got a multiplicative or a multiplication identity. I knew that was your answer. That's why I wasn't answering you. Oh, did you fill the thing out? One of my most hated questions of all time as a teacher. Ask any teacher. Ask them, you didn't fill out where you're going.
Yeah, put it in your spot.
Right here?
Right here. But I meant to put it right there. I wrote it in 2 places.
Is that blue one?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, here we go. So, the additive identity and the multiplication identity. So if I have a number, let's call the number A. What can I add to it so it doesn't change the value of it at all? Say it. 0. Exactly right. And that's what if I could talk, the additive identity is. Okay, it's just what can you do to it to not change it? But I got to do something to it. I'm adding a 0. Right? That is doing something, but it doesn't change the value, so it's equal to A. Right? Pretty simple. That's all it is. Big fancy word just for that simple little thing. What about the multiplication identity? Multiplication. Yeah, I heard it already. What do I do to A in order to not change it? What do I multiply it by in order not to change it? It's a 1, right? So I multiply by 1. And again, like I said, this is almost useless as far as we already know this, right? We already know that A plus 0 is A and A times 1 is A. But they just, put some words in there. They actually call this a multiplication property as 0. I've seen some books call it the multiplicative identity. That sounds kind of cool, doesn't it? Multiplicative kind of rolls off your tongue a little bit. Actually, you know what? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Multiplication identity or multiplicative identity. I do have it down in my notes as multiplicative identity. The other one they do is, let's see, that. Oh. Here's this one. It's the multiplication. I should have put multiplicative. Can you spell multiplicative? T-I-V-E. It's the multiplicative identity. All right, that's what that is. It's an identity. Again, the word identity means it stays exactly the same as it was before. All right. What about this? What about the multiplication? I'll just shorthand it. Multiplication property of 0. So property of 0. Put a 0 right there. What do you think that means? That word right there. Ty, what do you think? That's right. It's basically any number. We'll use a again. All right. If I multiply it, the multiplicative property of 0 means anytime I multiply anything by 0, I always get what? 0. Even if it's a negative number, right? Even a negative number times 0 is just 0. Anything times 0 is 0, right? And now we have an additive inverse property. Additive inverse property. All right, and what that is this. If I take A, we're using the same letter all the time. What's the inverse? Not the... Oh my, forgetting easy words. That's what happens. Not the reciprocal, okay? What is the inverse? The inverse means you just change the sign. What's the inverse of A? If you just change the sign, it's negative A, right? So if I took A and I added it to its inverse, what am I always going to get? I'm always going to get 0, okay? Doesn't matter if it's a negative number or not. So for instance, if I had negative 3, what do I add to it to get a 0? I add the inverse of it. What's the inverse of negative 3? It's positive 3, and that's equal to 0. Everybody see that? Again, you know all this stuff. You know how to add numbers like that. All we're doing is just putting big fancy words and properties next to it just so that you know what it means. All right. Makes you sound smart, I guess, right? So the double negative rule. Here, we only got 2 more to do. The double negative rule. What do you think that means? That means if we have a negative and then the double negative, Nico, would be 2 negatives, right next to it, okay? So if I have a negative and then I take the negative of a negative, what always happens when you take the negative of a negative? It's positive. I'm trying to think of something in English that people say all the time, a double negative. You probably heard that in English class, right? Don't use double negatives. I don't know. I used to be able to think of something. A double negative in English, like something that people use a lot. Like, I ain't not going to do that, or something like that. Well, what does that mean? The ain't part means a negative, right? And then you're not going to do it. So if you're not going to do it, that means you're going to what? You're going to do it, right? Okay, so anyway. I wish I could think of things quicker off the top of my head, but I can't. And that's not just because of age either. It's just because I'm just not that smart. All right, one more. So we did the additive inverse. Now we're going to do the multiplicative inverse. We had multiplicative before, but that was an identity. This time it's multiplicative inverse. So this will be the last one. Multiplicative.
I thought we already did this.
I just got done saying. Thank you, Ty. It's not just me. I wonder sometimes, is it just me? Did I say that already before? Maybe I didn't. Anyway, the multiplicative inverse is the same thing, and I used this word once before. I was trying to think of it. It's reciprocal. It means the same exact thing. But it sounds a lot fancier saying multiplicative inverse. But we'll probably, if we talk about this word and do some things with this, we'll probably use reciprocal more than anything. No way. Just wait till I'm finished. I'm almost done, okay? You can't wait like 5 minutes. Less than 5 minutes. It's probably like 3 minutes. You can't wait 3 minutes? Can you wait or not? I can't. Okay. I didn't see you nod or anything, so I don't know. All right, let's do this. Here we go. Let me talk. Just let me talk. That's what I get paid to do, okay? I don't get paid much to do it, but I do get paid a little bit to do it, so let me do it, all right? So watch. The reciprocal is basically if you take a number, okay, A represents a number, and then you just flip it, all right? If you flip it, that means because A normally is A over 1. Would you agree? Right? You don't always write it like that because it's just understood that it's A over 1. But if I multiply it by its reciprocal, what do I always get every single time I take a number and multiply by its reciprocal? I get a 1. Now, you do have to be careful, though, on this. you got to make sure that you say that a cannot equal 0. Why in the world did they put that in there? Why did they say that a can't be 0, Ty?
Because 0 is not a value, and it's not a value.
Well, 0 is a number. It's a value.
Yeah, 0, you have nothing. So
Now, it's still a number. Okay? It's a whole number. It's an integer. It's still something. Alex, what do you think?
Two reasons. One, you can't divide by 0.
That's what I wanted right there.
Two, I was going to say that if you multiply by 0, then the answer would be 0.
Well, you can still get... I like the first part of your answer better. That's what I was looking for, okay? And what did he say? Anybody hear him at around him? You can't divide by 0. That's right. Because if a is equal to 0, even though that's 0, if I go 1 divided by 0, that doesn't even exist. Okay, it's not like 0. Ty, I know what you're saying, that 0, it doesn't exist like in the physical world, right? You can't like hold 0 of these things, right? I get that. But it is a number, though, so it does exist. All right, but you cannot divide by 0. All right, you cannot divide by 0. Because sometimes we use numbers like -3. I can't like pick up -3 things. But -3 does exist. Like if I owe you $3, that's what it means, okay? If I'm golfing, disc golfing, that's what I like to do, right? If my score is -3, then it's what? It's 3 strokes, what? Under par. That's right. Okay, so those numbers do exist. 0 does exist. Listen, 0 does exist. Like if I shot even, I basically shot 0 for that day. I didn't shoot over, I didn't shoot under, I shot 0. But you're right, you can't physically pick it up. Okay, a couple more things. What about this? What's the inverse of 1/2? I'm going to put an arrow there. I didn't put equals. They don't equal each other. Just say it. What's the inverse of a half? It's just 2, right? You can put 2 over 1. It's perfectly fine. Okay, what about -5/7? What's the inverse or the reciprocal multiplicative inverse of -5/7? Okay, it's -7/5. Now let me just show you something about this when we're done. When you write fractions, like -5/7 could be written like this, or it could be written like this with a negative on the bottom, or you could do what? Just put it right out front, right to the side of it, exactly. So put it right out to the side like that, okay? So that means the same exact thing. Now -7/5 isn't the same thing, but it is the reciprocal. It's the multiplicative inverse, the reciprocal. So your homework, your new homework, is section... Now we call this C because this is the third part of 1-2. All right, so this is the third part. Now this does make a difference. What I call the lesson, right, when I teach the lesson and I break it up into A, B, C, and D, that really doesn't make any difference. But the homework, this does make a difference. So the one that we're gonna go over after I stop teaching, that's 1-2B. And then what you're gonna turn in right here that I'm writing on the screen is 1-2C. So that definitely makes a difference. So it's page 25 and it's 83 to 98. And you're doing them all because they're pretty simple. And really, that's not that many. It's only, 16 problems? That's not much at all. All right? So that's your homework. And now we're going to go over 1-2B. Megan, you can go. Let's see.